Good morning. This is Tara with the Painted Cicada. I am going live today for my Friday demo. I'm going to do some pansies, and give me just a second. I am going to check my YouTube and just make sure that I am live and y'all can hear me. Let's see. Oops, have to watch my own ad. Oh my goodness. All right. All right. I can hear myself. All right. That's good. Okay. Sorry about that. Having tech issues today. Gonna go ahead and get started. Hopefully that gave some people time to get on. All right. So today I have sketched out some pansies because I'm doing a demo. I wanted to have a plan, but I will walk through step by step how to sketch these. Using watercolors today, my absolute favorite are these Dr. P.H. Martin's Radiant watercolors. I've got black, not sure if I'm going to use the black. Definitely going to need yellow. I am going to use mostly slate blue, but probably, excuse me, a little violet as well. And then I've got an olive green for my greenery. So those are the colors that I'm using. Of course, you can use any watercolors that you'd like. I am going to sketch with these brush markers. Sometimes I like to sketch with these water-based markers because what will happen is when I put down the watercolor, it'll move and blend right along with the watercolor like it's not even there. And then I love using Canson XL watercolor paper. I've been an artist for as long as I can remember, and this is my favorite paper. Some people recommend, you know, higher quality, different brands, but this is my go-to. It makes the watercolor behave well. It's sturdy and it's fairly inexpensive. So I always recommend that. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's see, I'm trying to find a color to sketch with. All right, I am going to try to sketch just lightly. I don't want to go too dark with my color. I think I'm just going to go with this gray. All right, so we've got a set of pansies here, and pansies are fairly easy to draw. So what you're going to want to do is find your center, and then I am just going to make, it doesn't show up very well on camera, does it? Well, shoot, I guess I'll go a little bit darker. We'll do purple. Okay, so for the center of your pansy, just sketch out kind of a nice big circle. That's going to be your center. And I want two pansies, so two circles. In the center here, we're going to have kind of a patch of yellow where our leaves meet. So I am going to draw two intersecting ovals here, kind of like an X, almost like the center of a button. That's going to help me determine where my petals come from. So I got these two buttons. All right, let's start with our petals. So there are 4 primary petals, and then there's kind of a back petal that sneaks in there. So I am going to draw my top petal, and you'll see it kind of comes right out from that, the triangle and the X there. So I'm going to do the same thing over here, just kind of following that line. And then you see it kind of meets right where that X is. See, that X kind of helps us determine where our petals go. And then I've just added an extra petal back there. And then I'm going to do the same thing over here, right? right into that little divot there. And I just kind of go sketchy with the edges. I know that, you know, they're going to be kind of wavy and that kind of thing. All right, so there are my blooms, my blossoms. And I know that I'm going to need some stems. So I'm just going to sketch those stems in first. And then I'm probably going to add some extra blooms on here. I've got some sketched in there, so I'm going to add one up top here. So I'll sketch in the stem. And then at the end of this stem, I'm going to create 3 leafy pieces, just kind of football shaped. Drawing in some extra flowers here. Now these shapes are all just very sketchy and basic. I'm not doing anything too crazy. Don't worry about being exact. This is just kind of a fun, loose floral. Gonna add in some leaves off these stems. And then I am going to add in some flower buds at the end here. So 2 or 3 kind of wavy pieces. That one's a 3. Let me show you a 2. So we're just giving the impression of unbloomed pansies. The pansies are kind of loose and floppy and large petaled, so there's lots of waves and movement. And then I have some pencil lines I'm going to go ahead and get rid of here. If you're using a pencil, just remember when you sketch, go very lightly. Pansies are one of my favorite flowers. I do pansies quite often. Purple is one of my favorite colors. That's probably why. All right. Pretty, pretty pansies. Okay, there we go. Now, let me move this over. Get my drink out of the way. Whew. All right, I don't think I'll need my pencil anymore. I'm going to get my watercolors ready. Now, it doesn't matter what kind of watercolors you have. Everybody works a little differently. Some people like to work out of pan watercolors. Some people have them in tubes. I like to use this liquid watercolor, but I like to just get them kind of out and I don't know what the word is, liquefied, ready to use, I guess is what I'm trying to say. The watercolors that I have here are highly concentrated, so I do like to thin those out quite a bit before using. So I'm going to start with the background wash on my petals. All right, so I have got slate blue, which is kind of like a, I don't know, a darker navy blue, and a purple. And what I'm going to do, I'm working right on dry, is, let me get some water over here. I'm going to thin this slate blue down and make a nice, just a thin blue wash. And I'm going to go over my petals with this wash. And it's going to touch those brush pens and pull that color in. I am totally cool with that. That's exactly what I wanted to happen. That's why I used brush pens and not permanent marker or dark pencil lines. I want it to pick up that water soluble medium. And it's just going to change that color up a bit wherever it touches. And that's exactly what I want to happen. I want pinches of that purple to come in here with this blue. And I'm not going to go over that X of my button. I'm going to leave that there. That's going to be a yellow that we add in later. Right now I'm just adding the wash into the background of the pansy. We're just laying down our initial color. And you can go ahead and do that back petal too. And I'm going to do the same thing up here, same process. We're just filling in patches of color at this point. And it's okay if your flower and your petals are a little different than mine, because all flowers are different from each other. No two are exactly alike. Even though they're similar, they're all just a tiny bit different. I'm going to do the same thing here with these unbloomed flowers, just laying in the color. And if you want to, you can add a smidge of purple if your purple's not, if you didn't use a brush pen and you want to mix in a little purple, don't be afraid to vary up the background color of these flowers a little bit. They don't all have to be the exact same color. There's variation within the flower petals. So I've got mostly slate blue, and I've got a touch of purple from this brush pen. Of course, yours could be all blue, they could be all purple, whatever. We're just having a good old time. All right. Now, this is still mostly wet, right? I've got lots of dampness still left in my paper here. So what I'm going to do at this point is, while this is still a little wet, I'm going to darken this just a pinch with the slate blue. And then I'm going to come through and add just a little more color. Wet on wet is what this is called when we add color onto wet paper. Right here in the center, and it's going to blend out on its own. Again, I'm not adding any color in that little X in the middle. And then down here, I'm going to do the same thing by those, the inside right next to the leaves. And so that is called wet on wet, and we're just adding that in there. We're going to let that blend out. And if your paper dried a little, of course, you can encourage a little blend, but if we work quickly enough, that should mostly do the work all on its own for us, right? All right. Now I didn't mention, I'm just using a normal round brush. This is a Royal Aquilon, is the brush that I like to use for watercolor. This is a size 6 round, and I'm going to use this pretty much the whole time. I do want these to dry a little bit, and so while the blooms are drying, I am going to prepare some green. And I am going to draw in my stems. Now I've already got them sketched in with my brush marker, but what I'm going to do is just, oops, I'm going to come back with this I'm going to get a fairly dark green, and I'm going to go over my stems. I'm going to thicken them up a little bit in some places. I'm going to add my first wash of color in these leaves. Now be careful, you don't want it to blend with your blue, so just leave a little tiny space in between the edges so that your green and your blue do not touch. You can always come back and fix that later if it bothers you not to have them touching. But I'm just adding in a wash. Wet on dry, so this part we're doing just right on the dry watercolor. I'm being very careful not to let my colors touch. Right now at this first stage, it's pretty much almost just like coloring, right? We're just adding down that first layer of color, getting everything filled in. Hiding that brush pen. Another option too, and obviously I should have mentioned this when we got started, if you don't have these watercolor brush pens, if you have watercolor pencils, it's the same idea. You can sketch in with the watercolor pencil, and then as you paint, it just blends in. All right, so I've got my green all filled in. And what I'm going to do now is just come right back to that green, and I'm going to tap in more color just for variation around these leaves and stems so that it's not all just solid and boring. We want some variation. So just tapping in color. You can do it on your stems as well, just here and there. And when we tap in color here, this technique is called wet on wet. And you'll see it kind of move and blends like crazy. All right, what shall we do next? I am going to get a fine-tipped brush. So this is probably the only other brush I'll be using today. I like to just use a real fine tip and then my round. So this is a number 1. It's just going to make some nice clean lines. And what I'm going to do, let's see, I've got this, well, that kind of got dirtied up a little bit. I'm going to take just a little bit of water. I am going to mix up a medium blue here. I want it to be darker than the background wash. Maybe I'll tap in even a little purple. That was a lot of purple. That's okay. Let me blue that up a bit. All right. I added a little more color than I wanted, so I'm going to thin it down just a bit. There we go. I always test it on my paper towel. All right, with these nice thin lines, what I'm going to do is I am going to come around the center of the flower, and I'm going to pull lines out from the center. Just nice, long, thin lines. And I'm going to go about, I don't know, 1/2 to 3/4 of the way from the center of that petal. These are just kind of the veins of the petal. Some can be shorter, some can be longer. And don't overthink it, guys. This is just, you know, I'm not going for realism. I'm representing a flower here. So I'm not going for perfection. And then kind of the same thing down here. I don't need to add quite as many. So maybe 1 or 2 on each petal section. So if I've got 2 petal sections, I'm going to do less. If I've got 3 petal sections, maybe I'll do a little bit more. Obviously, this is not finished yet, so give it We're kind of in our awkward teenage stage at this point. Give it a chance. We're still working. All right, now I'm going to do the exact same thing using the same color I just did. I'm not going to do this as much on these small petals, just a few, and I'm going to come in from the top. So just a few on the unbloomed. And then I'm going to come around and just do this to all of my edges, just little small strokes inward. Again, some longer, some shorter. Don't forget where you have that double petal to do both the petal that's in the back and the petal in the front. All right, again, we're going back and forth between the blooms and the stems. So I'm going to use this fine brush again, and I've got this green left over. I am going to add some of this slate blue to my green here, just to vary up this green color. And my leaves are mostly dry. They might be slightly damp. If they are, you can always just, if you've got a heat gun or a hair dryer, you can always just zap it real quick. And that will dry it enough that we can do what we want to do, because I want to work on dry. And so with this darker color here, I'm going to just add some shadows to the underside of my leaf. And I need to make this a little more concentrated. So get the right mix of color. We're going for a nice, let's try this again. I'll have to come back to that section. So I want to add shadows. So wherever, you know, like the underside of a leaf, the side that faces the bottom, right, we're just going to add in some darker color. So like here, it's the underside where it kind of curls over. Down here under this leaf, it'll be darker for sure. You know, I keep darkening my green and then I keep thinning it out. You just need to go dark and stay dark. There we go. All right, so anywhere your stems are kind of under a flower, under another leaf, you just want to darken that a little bit, give it a little shadow. Variation is key when we're talking about watercolor. So adding in some layers, differences in the shades, darkness and light. Remember, I'm not going for realistic. Don't be hard on yourself. We're just adding variation. It just gives interest to the piece. And don't forget to add some variation in these little petals or leaves we have here that kind of are surrounding those unopened blooms. Just tapping in some green so that there's variation in the color. A little bit here, a little bit there. It goes a long way. And we're done with the greenery. And the next thing that we're going to do is we need to darken up these petals. The center of pansies are dark. So I am going to get my larger brush here and I'm going to dip right into this slate blue. And I am going to come in and remember we had kind of that center outline. I am going to come in and I am going to pull this slate right out from that star. Leave your star white for now, that little star there in the middle. And I'm just going to pull past that center circle that we created in the very beginning. And I'm varying the length of my strokes there. And I'm just making sure that I'm going past that center line that I had originally created. And I can even come in and tap some darker color in there. All right, do the same thing over here. And as you see, as we start to layer all these pieces, it begins to look more and more like a pansy. Now, right now, I just I just did the 4 front petals, but we don't want to ignore the back petals. So let me try to mix this up and get the same shade that I just had because I ran out of paint. We do need to add a little bit of darkness on this back petal as well. And so what I'm going to do is find the opening here. I am going to pull that dark blue out from where that back petal peeks through. Over here, I don't have a lot of peek through, so I'm just going to add a little touches of color right where those petals meet so that you can see that it's just a little darker back there. And then I also want to add touches of this dark color where this bloom meets the greenery. As you can see, as we start to layer, it becomes more and more like a pansy. Layering is really key when you are using watercolor. So I am going to dry this really quickly so that I can add one more layer of this blue, and then we're going to add in our yellow, and then it's done. I am really loving this. All right, so I'm going right into my deep slate blue, and I'm just going to add a nice second layer of this blue just to darken it up right in the center. We want our center nice and dark. You could even add a touch of black in there for shadow. I think I'm gonna do that. So I added in my blue. Let's see, I'm gonna add a touch of black over here. I am just gonna touch right in that center and let it blend out. I want it to be darkest right in that center there. So I'm adding just a third layer of this slate. So we did our first layer when we pulled out some of those pieces. We did our second layer, and now I'm adding in a third, and I'm just touching the tiniest bit of black right there in that center. And it's going to blend out into that blue. I'm not going to add any black over here in the unbloomed flowers, but I am just going to touch in this darker blue. Again, I just want it to be the most shadowed where it meets that greenery. All right, in order for me to tap in that yellow, I do need this to be completely dry. Otherwise, the black will blend inward and I'm just kind of helping this blend out slightly. And I don't want my yellow and black to mix. That would just create yuckiness. So I'm going to dry this, primarily just drying the center of these because that's where I'm putting the yellow. And I'm not going for complete dryness. I'm just trying to get that mostly dry. I don't need a lot of yellow. A pinch is going to go a long way. And then I'm just going to tap it into this center here. And I am going to touch the blue and the black, and it may pull in slightly. I just don't want it to overpower that yellow. And that is it. That is our pansy demo for today. I'm really enjoying doing watercolors with you this month. I hope you give it a try. If you do, please share with me. I would love to see it. You can share with me in any of my groups, or you can tag me at Painted Cicada. I would love to see it. I'll highlight my group, Mixed Media Crazy, so you can always join that and share your work with me. And that's all I've got for you today. I'll see you again at the next demo. Have a great day, everybody.